Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff from Astroscoop, Astrology Coaching, Western Astrology. This is Astroscoop 3801 on YouTube. And it is 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday, August 24th, 2025. So how's everyone doing? We'll wait a few minutes, see if anyone comes in. So this is my new time for now. It's going to be either 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on YouTube for my Astroscoop live streams. Normally we do them on Friday nights, sometimes Saturday, but for now I've been doing them on Sundays. So if you tune in or you catch the replay, please note that in your calendar or phone. Sundays, once in a while, it could be at noon or 1, but most likely will be 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on YouTube. And you can also follow me on X, Astro_Scoop, and I'm on Instagram as well, Astroscoop7, where I do posts and reels, and I will also share a lot of the live stream content that I use on here. So how's everyone doing? It is Virgo time. We are still technically on the Virgo-Leo cusp, which I talked about last week. So please check out my live stream from last Sunday, which is all about the period going up until the 25th or 26th of August. Today's the 24th, so we're still on the cusp period. And then Virgo began a couple days ago. So we are in Virgo, and we'll take a look at the cosmic astrological chart. We're going to take a look at that chart, look at transits. We're also going to take a look at a celebrity chart as well. And I'm going to mix a little bit of all that in. Instead of just me talking all about Virgo and traits, we're going to mix in examples with the celebs and also the transits. So hopefully if anyone comes in late or you catch this on the replay, you'll know up front early on what I'm doing. Virgo description, Virgo celebrity examples, planetary transits, which is the cosmic chart right now, and then celebrity chart example as well. So please stay tuned for that. So August 24th, 2025, we're in very early Virgo, and happy new moon, which occurred yesterday. It's still the new moon. The new moon is when the sun and moon are conjunct in Virgo. And of course, we just started Virgo, and the moon was conjunct the sun yesterday in a very early degree of Virgo. So when the sun and moon are both in Virgo, our collective identity and ego and our emotions and our personality are both tied to the earth sign Virgo. Earth sign Virgo is I analyze or I discriminate, and it's also mutable. And it is the second earth sign after Taurus. Taurus goes Taurus, Virgo, and then Capricorn's towards the end of the zodiac in the winter. But tonight's going to be all about Virgo. And I always love talking about the first period of every sign each month when we do this, because it's the fresh, raw, most typical period of that sign coming off of the cusp, coming off of whichever cusp we are. All right, looks like we have one person in. We'll wait a couple minutes to get started. Also, just a reminder, if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, suggestions, please leave them in the comments either on this live stream or any of the previous live streams, or you can pick my latest Leo Cancer cusp video. You can also drop a line in there and I read every single comment, and I try to respond to every comment as well, because it's very useful getting that feedback from all of you to move forward, that sort of thing. So it's always fun talking about the first period of any sign, the last week of the month into the first week of the next month, because we're always dealing with pure energy. Now, last week, or which we're currently on now, if you know someone that was born yesterday, the 23rd, or is born today, the 24th, or even tomorrow, the 25th of August, that person is a very early Virgo, depending on the year. Some August 23 people are 29 Leo, but most are very, very close to being 0 of Virgo. If you're today, you're Virgo. If you're tomorrow, you're Virgo, obviously. But you would also be on that Leo cusp. So you would have a little bit of Leo energy, and you would have a little bit of Leo residue, rather than being a pure Virgo. So Virgo 1, which is August 26th in 2 days, to September 2nd or 3rd, is the pure Virgo period. So now you're coming off the Leo cusp, and it's all Virgo. It's all Earth sign energy. And it's Mercury times 2. So I know I talked about this last year. I'm going to try not to repeat the same old things I talked about last year. But Mercury, Virgos in the next week, are their ruler's Mercury, and their co-ruler is also Mercury. So they are among the most mercurial individuals of the year. And when I use the word mercurial, it's mercurial more so defines Gemini, but Virgo and Gemini are both ruled by Mercury, so they're kind of twins in that way, that they both share the Mercury influence, those two signs. And some people also count, there was a god in ancient times named Vulcan. So there was Vulcan energy in a god form that was sort of lame or walked in a lame way. And so some astrologers, including Linda Goodman, if you know who Linda Goodman is or was, will say that early Virgo energy, or even Virgo rising people that have early degrees of Virgo, often may walk with a limp or have something odd or peculiar about their gait or the way that they walk, or the way they carry themselves. And not sure, thinking of the Virgos I've known this week, I haven't known many, and I haven't read for many either astrologically. So this is definitely a week that I have not had a lot of experience with people on a one-on-one basis, either work-wise, acquaintance-wise, or astrological readings, etc. But being double Mercury and the possible Vulcan influence for Virgo, really, one thing about Virgo people I notice is Virgo people, at least physically, they tend to not be overweight, but they also are not that skinny, at least from what I can think of. So there's a solid quality, I think, physically to having Virgo sun or Virgo rising, or planets near the ascendant in Virgo, that causes sort of an elongation in the body, or long legs, maybe a long torso or arms, but not necessarily skinny, but not necessarily overweight either. So something kind of very solid. Now, I do know one Virgo, I can think of one Virgo that's born this week, and he is, he's middle-aged, and he's average, just total average size. He's not skinny, but he's not overweight for his size, for his build. But Virgo can almost be fleshy, almost like Pisces. Like Pisces people tend to be, tends to be something fleshy about their appearance or their body, even if they're not big people. Just like Taurus people tend to have something very strong with their neck and their shoulders. So for Virgo, you have both. This is true for Virgo and Gemini, that they tend to have like long fingers or very dexterous fingers, and maybe even long arms as well, sort of thing physically. But the Virgos born this coming week from August 26th, I'm sorry, to September 2nd or 3rd is all Mercury. So if you know any Virgo people born this week, or you are a Virgo, you'll know that there is a little bit of a quiet hermit or recluse in you that needs alone time. It needs that space. And it's not space in the sense like that an air sign would need, or maybe even a fire sign for independence, but it's more so a hermit, like the hermit card, the hermit symbol in the tarot deck, and very similar to a man or a woman that wants to have a quiet, clean, pure sort of lifestyle, and may want to do that by themselves. The positive Virgo person tends to be very discriminating. So if you know any Virgo people that are true Virgo, or if they, especially if they have major planets other than the sun in Virgo, like Mercury or rising. I once knew a Virgo woman who was a triple Virgo. She had sun, Mercury, and rising all in Virgo, and her sun and the rising sign were very close to each other, so it was very powerful. And she was incredibly polite and helpful, but she was also very, very critical of people. She had a very sharp critical nature. So for Virgos born this week, that's their thing. They could be the tarot person or the hermit person in the tarot deck that wants to do things in a clean, pure way and wants to purify themselves. That could be physically, spiritually, mentally. They often miss the mark emotionally, though, and that's when I'll mention the opposite of Pisces. Not that Virgos don't have emotions. Virgos do care. Virgos are dutiful and caring in their own way, but not necessarily emotional, especially Virgo men, especially Virgo males. Virgo males are a little bit of an enigma. So if you are a Virgo male, or you know someone who is, you'll know that you're not always easily understood. But then again, you may go out of your way not to be understood because of the shyness, and you can puzzle people somewhat. And that's very much true for the next week of Virgo, which we'll talk about next week, Virgo 2. But Virgo people in general, what are we dealing with all that Mercury? We're dealing with nervousness. Now, this is something shared with Gemini. All the mutable signs, which are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, all have a certain restlessness or nervous quality to them, simply because they're more malleable and they can change and adjust. They're not fixed like the fixed signs, and they're not pushing forward in a very single-minded way like the cardinal signs. So being a mutable sign and being Earth, there's sort of a practical nervousness that Virgo people have when they're tending, especially to their environment, practically. And so nervousness and insecurity go hand in hand with Virgo. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't Virgos that are secure and not nervous, but most of the time when I see major Virgo in a chart, I'm seeing a sort of a practicality and a practical nervousness about having things a certain way, doing things a certain way, and feeling insecure when those methods are not met. So I put on the thumbnail for the live stream tonight. You can see the thumbnail on my channel. I put building blocks. So that's very much a theme for early Virgo people, is building blocks. Much as like a baby or a toddler is going to learn to build with toys, and they're learn to master their fine motor skills and start to put that hand to hand eye coordination, hand mind, hand eye skills to work. But the nervousness and insecurity is often there with Virgo, and how Virgos cope with that often is who or what can I serve? So Virgo is I analyze, but Virgo's analyzing your situation and theirs, and then they're figuring out, well, what can we do to fix something that's here? So Virgo may even look for something to fix that's not even there. And so whether that's a pro or a con, it depends on the situation. Because in some situations, people with major Virgo can be incredibly helpful, and they're very good troubleshooters in a lot of ways. They're good troubleshooters, especially practically or maybe technologically or with computers or things like that. People with major Virgo, especially Sun, Moon, or Mercury, can be really, really gifted with that. But they're always looking to how can I serve, or like who can I serve? So the nervousness and insecurity, early Virgo people have to be careful of not giving, to be discriminating, and not to give their serving, dutiful energies to just anyone, but specifically not to the stray dogs and the stray cats of the world, which is also a theme with Pisces. So this is a Virgo Pisces polarity kind of theme, is figuring out what can I give, how can I serve so that I can feel whole, or so that I can feel good self-esteem, good self-image. So it's important for Virgos to take care of themselves and to have self-care, as well as all that duty, that dutiful nature to others through family or work or friendships. So why would a Virgo be insecure? Well, it's kind of like the point I just made. Virgo's insecure when things are messy. So it could be when things are literally messy, when the room is cluttered and there's stuff everywhere. But more so, it's emotional or mental mess. So Virgos don't like emotional or mental mess, especially emotional mess. It's very hard for Virgos to deal with situations that are emotionally chaotic or emotionally unpleasant. So Virgos can suffer a lot in very much like Libra, in environments that don't have good harmony. So that's not really talked about. I don't think too much about Virgo, but Virgo being the sign before Libra, there's an analysis there that Virgo likes things pure. And part of that is their environment. But there's also a side to Virgo that can be messy. Some Virgos I've known have been very messy people, physically, and not that well groomed, or they don't care about the grooming that much. And others are meticulously groomed or meticulous about their cleaning, their projects, their planning, their building blocks. So Virgo is one of those signs where it can kind of go either way, depending on their Mercury sign. You got to look up their Mercury sign in the chart. I've known a lot of Virgos with Mercury in Libra, or I've looked up charts with Mercury in Libra. So that changes the scope a little bit, because Libra Mercury is a little more balanced than a Virgo Mercury. That's going to see fall easier. But Virgos in general like that. They like to correct or perfect what's in their environment. Now, this is a big lesson for them, is to believe. Believe equals self-confidence. So if you had two Virgos together, I once had a friend back in the day that I don't know if his parents are still alive, but had or has two Virgo parents. So both of his parents were Virgo. And they were different weeks, though. I think one was this week, another one, I'm not sure. But they were both Virgos. So what would it be like to have two Virgo people together? Well, if you had two Virgo people, especially in this week, you would have two people that may lack self-confidence, even though they're very skillful in a lot of practical ways. Virgos are often very skilled. They have these like quiet little ninja skills with things. You know, Virgos could be like quiet little ninjas and can have major, major skills. Virgos will like, oh, I know how to do that. You know, Virgos can really surprise you. And that comes out with that helpful nature. But if you have too much, they need to believe. They need to believe sometimes, even suspend their disbelief for a period of time. It's very hard sometimes for Virgo people to just believe. And I'm not talking about believe like truth from what someone else tells you. I don't necessarily mean that. I mean, just in life, faith. Just believe that things can work out. Believe that things could get better. Believe that if you have a terrible day or a terrible week, the next week can be good. And it's very important for Virgos to work on that and to work on that self-confidence. Now, I've met Virgos before that, not a lot, but I've met a couple that were, I would consider self-confident. I had an acupuncturist once years ago, and she did acupuncture on me for allergies. And she was very, very confident, very, capable, very skilled. But she also had a very kind of fragile self-esteem, and she was very self-effacing. And she said, I know that I'm in touch with my Virgo nature. I know that I'm like that, and I'm working on that. So that's very important for Virgos to believe. Virgo is one of those signs that may have a tendency to go down the cynical path or the cynical road. And sometimes it's warranted because it's realistic and it's practical. So they're looking at things that's in front of them in the here and now. Or sometimes it's just easier to not take chances, especially emotional chances or emotional risk. And it's easier to just go down that path and keep a mental orientation or an analytical orientation towards their environment to protect themselves. So Virgo, very much like Capricorn, which we talk about in the winter, all the earth signs can be reserved and can have some kind of armor. So that includes Virgo as well. Virgo can be kind of armored sometimes when it comes to expressing some of those softer or deeper qualities. And they do have some really nice, pure qualities. The Virgo, positive Virgo earth energy that's secure is lovely. It's gentle. It can be low key. It's not dramatic like Leo. We're coming off the Leo period, which can be bombastic and dramatic. Not every situation requires bombast. So that's where Virgo comes in to balance that out in an earthy way, not in an air sign way, but an earth way, to say, let's take all of Leo's brilliance and charisma and pizzazz, and let's bring it down to earth and see what we can do that makes sense. See what we can do to serve and or build blocks. So one musician that I mention every year for Virgo is Alex Lifeson. He is one half of Rush, the Canadian trio rock group from Canada. And Alex he's quite humble when he's talked about his talent, when he talks about his talent or he's inquired about it. And he's probably one of the most gifted guitarists and songwriters for the guitar on the planet. His skills are unbelievable. The details and the mathematical structures that he builds in the group Rush are unbelievable. However, he has shown in interviews and also with his bandmates a little bit of a self-effacing quality or a shy quality, or with some issues with self-esteem. So even Alex, as a grown man, has struggled with that, even though he is confident and gifted and incredibly talented, and he has built all his blocks very well. Right? He's an amazing example. Another amazing example of a Virgo born this week is Michael Jackson. I know I mentioned him in several videos and live streams. It always comes back to Michael Jackson. Now, I don't think Michael is or was the best singer of all time, or even the best performer of all time, but he's certainly up there in the top 10 of overall impact and influence from a popular entertainer. There's no denying that Michael's perfectionism and his hard work and his diligence to his moves, with his voice, with the videos, with the stage shows, all of that, the choreography, everything was incredibly methodical with Michael. So, he just ran himself ragged, basically how his body changed and his face changed and his weight changes and everything. Just almost, you know, literally almost killed himself by working so hard and so dogged and building his blocks in such an amazing, meticulous, detailed way. But look at the body of work that he has left us with, especially the Off the Wall album, and the Thriller album in particular. Those two really are just amazing. Even if you don't like that kind of music, there's no denying how magical and amazing the Wall album is. Just it's just I don't even know. It's just stellar. Stellar musicians, stellar songwriting, Michael's energy, you know, amazing. And an incredibly shy, nervous, insecure person. But when he got on stage, you know, he was able to do his thing. So these Virgos are obviously organized. You got a lot of Mercury there, so there's a lot of mental orientation to everything, to schooling and projects and work. And they're also very physical. They can be well coordinated physically. And that can also mean, this combination of being organized and physical means they are physically organized. They make great doctors, nurses, especially they make great alternative practitioners like chiropractors, naturopaths, homeopaths, you know, physical therapists, occupational therapy. Those are all great healing modalities that Virgos can excel in. And I'm sure a lot of the physical therapy people on X and Instagram are probably Virgos. The amount of detail they put into their steps for all their healing regimens for certain ailments with their joints and things like that. So they're organized and physical, but they can also be kind of dull. So if you think about Virgo, when Virgo is with other earth signs, or if the Virgo person has other earth signs in their chart, they will be most likely very down to earth or very salt of the earth, but they can also be kind of dull at times because of their need for routine and their need to have things kind of simple in the here and now. And also their lack of curiosity for the more emotional or mysterious parts of life, sort of thing. So that's one thing that Virgo can be uninterested in. They can be interested more in the physical, spiritual, rather than the emotional, spiritual kind of thing, if that makes any sense. So I'm not saying Virgos are dull. I'm just saying too much Virgo in a chart can possibly, it's hard to rise above. Even too much Earth in any chart can make someone too heavy and too grounded, and that can actually work against you. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, the opposite of Virgo 1 is Pisces 1, which we'll be talking about in the winter. And so Pisces 1 is all Neptune. Virgo 1 is all Mercury. So Pisces and Virgo share similar qualities. When I read a chart or I look up a chart and I see someone, let's say with a stellium in Pisces or a stellium in Virgo, I often see similar ways of behavior, but there's similar themes, I should say, behavior themes, and of course the way they work those out is different. But there are similar themes of being shy, being retiring, sometimes issues with self-esteem, and issues with lacking confidence. Very much true for Pisces 1 and Virgo 1. And the Pisces 1 is cosmic and spiritual. So when you hear someone talking about cosmic, if someone's saying cosmic a lot or cosmology, they probably have major Pisces in the chart. That's kind of a giveaway that they're a Neptune kind of person. But they can also lack being down to earth, which is what Virgo 1 could provide if a Virgo 1 was friends with or in a partnership with a Pisces 1 person. So it's that combination of giving each other the cosmic and spiritual from the water, and then the earth being more practical and pragmatic. And too much of either isn't good. Virgo Pisces is a tough polarity. And if you have too much, like I said, if you have too much Virgo or too much Pisces in your chart, you can be very shy and retiring, and it can also be something that could be a sort of a seesaw of not being able to advocate for yourself or stick to things in a very fixed way, or be cardinal and take charge. So there can be some difficulty there. All right, so some more celebrities we have is Bob Welch. I know I mentioned him last year. He's one of the original singers and guitarists from Fleetwood Mac. Most people don't know that. He's also a solo artist, or was a solo artist, but he's one of the early incarnations of Fleetwood Mac before the signature Fleetwood Mac setup with Stevie and Lindsay and Christine McVie and Mick Fleetwood, which was the core kind of radio success, Fleetwood Mac. But he's great. He's wonderful. He's very, very underrated. But his music definitely, it's interesting that he's a Virgo and Stevie Nicks, who came on later, is a Gemini. So they both bring a certain Mercury element to the group, but in different ways. Barry Gibb is, he's someone I mentioned many times. I mentioned the Gibb brothers because they're great examples from the Bee Gees. So Barry is the Virgo brother, born this week, Virgo 1. And I would imagine the amount of diligence and perfectionism that he put into his singing and songwriting is probably unmatched. And another thing is the Virgo 1 energy to put their mind into something practical, or their voice into using something practical, is they don't have to be the leader. So I think Barry was the leader of the group, kind of. You know, he was the kind of handsome kind of point person of the Bee Gees. I think most people thought of Barry, but he didn't. I don't think he had to be. That's one very positive part of Virgo energy is Virgo energy doesn't always want to. They don't want to be a leader or rule the roost like an Aries or a Virgo. I'm sorry, an Aries or a Leo or a Capricorn. They don't necessarily want that. They could have the skills to do it, but they don't really want, their personality doesn't lend itself to that. And I think that's also why he's been so successful with the Bee Gees, and that he's been able to adapt and be humble and not just go off on his own and say it's all about me, which happens time and time again with groups where the front person, usually a front man, goes off because he's too wrapped up in himself and has too big an ego, and then leaves the other bandmates behind, and then it's history from that point. Another celebrity is Jason Priestley, and he's a Canadian actor. He was most well known for Beverly Hills 90210 in the 90s, but he's also done a lot of Canadian movies and some TV spots, mostly in Canada. And I think Jason's underrated. I think he is. He has a very interesting kind of. He has a natty kind of look to him that's very Virgo to me. With his hair and the way he dresses, he's got the beard, but he's very neat. And I think the way he speaks in his roles, he has this very concerned look in his eyes, and he's very mercurial. So I think Jason's kind of fun. He's kind of fun to watch, and he's definitely very much Virgo to me. Okay, let's see. Let's look at. All right, let's look at. Let's see if. Let's look at the transits here. Okay. See. Okay. All right, so here's the transits. This is August 24th, 2025. I think we lost a couple people. I only see one person in, so I'll just see if anyone else comes in. August 24th, 2025. Now, this is one day after the new moon, so here is all the Virgo energy here. Now, this is the chart as of almost 7 p.m. tonight, New York's Eastern time. So a baby born tonight in the last hour would have all this Virgo intercepted in his or her 7th house. But this sun is only at 2 of Virgo. The moon is now at 22, which is almost out of Virgo. But this early Virgo energy was also opposing some of this outer asteroid Pisces energy. Now, this isn't personal energy because these are not personal planets. You have the part of fortune and you have the Earth there, which are in Pisces. But there's a little bit of push-pull with Virgo and Pisces energy there. And that would affect anyone with early Pisces degree planets or early Virgo degree planets, primarily. Not just anyone with a random Virgo or Pisces planet that's a different degree. And of course, the node here is still in Pisces, and that's retrograde. But all this Virgo energy, no Taurus, and of course, no Capricorn. So all the Earth is here. But the Virgo energy is just a time to purify. You know, I watched a new moon video yesterday from an astrologer, a new person I subscribe to, and she's like a spiritual coach. And I liked her take very much on Virgo. I can't remember her name. I didn't write her name down. But I liked her approach on Virgo because she talked about the practical aspects of Virgo, like I mentioned, but she also talked about how Virgo can rise above that and do a spiritual cleaning for themselves, and they can give that to others. So the higher Virgo person, especially early Virgo, can elevate themselves to a level where they've mastered certain skills on a physical level or an earth level, you know, and an everyday routine kind of level. But then they can use their higher Mercury attributes to tune into, if they allow themselves, if they believe, to tune into more spiritual dimensions or spiritual energies and still retain, still keeping their feet on the ground and retain that earthiness that is just them, that is just Virgo. So I really liked her take about that spirituality with Virgo and the cleanliness, not just physical cleanliness or just cleanliness in your environment, but spiritual, I think she said, like a spiritual cleaning, like clean yourself up spiritually, like, you know, and just make yourself a little more neat and a little nicer, a little more polite. I like that. That's really good. That's the positive Virgo. You know, the positive Virgo teaches all the other signs to be a little more elegant, be a little elegant, be a little more low key, and be polite. Nothing wrong with that, right? Sometimes low key and polite is really a nice, fresh change from some of the, you know, more stringent and strong energies of some of the other signs of the zodiac. So that's really what the new moon in Virgo can really teach us. Now, Venus is going to go into Leo this week, so we will have still a touch of Leo. Of course, the cusp is here for 2 more days, but we will have a little more Leo with love. Mercury is in Leo here for a little bit, so we're not completely without Leo. And then, of course, we have the outer planets. The outer planets here: Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. The Pluto is at 1 of Aquarius, retrograde. I mean, these are all going to stay there for a long time. They're going to move so slow. Saturn's going to go back into Pisces very soon. It's retrograde and it's going back into Pisces. So all those people that had their Saturn return, all the Saturn Pisces people that I mentioned last week, and I've mentioned this season, only the late degree Pisces are going to get another hit. But if you're a Saturn in Pisces, like if you're 31 years old and from 94 or 64 or 34, 64, or 94, you're done with your Saturn return. You're not, even though Saturn's going back into Pisces, there's nothing new is really going to happen. You're all done with that. And then Mars, as I mentioned, Mars is in Libra, which is direct, and that's almost smack dab in the middle. And no Sag. There's the Aries. Uranus in Gemini here. And then, of course, the Aquarius. But what's interesting is Uranus trines Pluto, but we don't have an early Libra planet to trine these, which really would be nice because then we'd have a grand air trine here. We'd have all these early air sign energy, which would be raw air sign would be all trine. But we don't quite have that. We did have that when Mars was earlier. But the moon yesterday, this new moon, squared Uranus or Uranus in Gemini. It didn't do anything with Sag, that would be a square. And then, as I mentioned, it opposed these outer Pisces asteroid points. But the main thing is the sun here. The moon is not square this anymore, but it was, and the sun square Uranus. So there's a lot. That's a lot of mental instability and change there with Virgo and Gemini, which are the twins of each other because of Mercury, not literal twins, because Gemini is the symbol of the twins, but just because they share Mercury. So that's definitely a strongly versatile, but also kind of nervous and very mentally, extremely mentally restless. So expect that for a few days, maybe even this whole week, especially any of you that have early Gemini or early Virgo planets where Uranus is conjuncting it or squaring your early Virgo. You'll feel that tension, and it most likely would be within nervousness. It could be physical restlessness too, but it will most likely be something with Mercury and some kind of practical, pragmatic restlessness. And also indecision too. That's not easy to make decisions. Mercury is still in Leo. It's not retrograde, but of course, I mentioned this before. Mercury in Leo is not it's not a great placement for Mercury astrologically. So it will be better when it gets into Virgo. All right, let's stop sharing that. Does this every week. Okay. All right. So what else do we have here? So as I mentioned, Virgo has the twin of Gemini, and that's only because they're both Mercury. So if you combine a Virgo 1 and Gemini 1, which is late May and early June, the early Gemini that we talked about, they share some things, as I mentioned before. They share that penchant for being mercurial or mental, not necessarily an emotional or personal approach to things. So they can either be thoughtful or anxious. There's a seesaw. Are they thoughtful or are they anxious together? And they can be both or either. So I think people that have major Gemini or major Virgo in the chart, meditation or yoga or Pilates or Tai Chi. I mean, I do yoga. I'm not a crazy yoga person. I do a very mild kind of beginner. I'm beginner to moderate level yoga, but even the littlest bit. Now, I don't have. All I have is an outer planet in Virgo. I don't have any major Virgo, but it helps. Even 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes of anything, yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, any of that can help just level you out a little bit. And the Virgo, it's interesting. Virgo can be low key and calm, but underneath that, they can be like wildly nervous and kind of chaotic that they won't show to anybody. They'll keep that in reserve. They won't necessarily show it, but their actions might show it, or the way they go about their daily life or projects. So two people that I wanted to mention. So Melissa McCarthy is a comedian and actress. She's a Virgo born this week. And then Dana Carvey, who I've mentioned before, he's a Gemini 1. So Gemini 1 is Dana, and Melissa's a Virgo 1. So I thought to myself, well, they're both Mercury comic people and actors. How are they similar and how are they different? Well, they're similar in the sense that they're both extremely sharp, well-spoken, and witty. And that works really well with comedy, and they have great timing. So Virgo and Gemini, when they put their Mercury and their smarts and wit into work, when they study that into work, they could do really, really well. And because they're adaptable, they can quickly change their approach or their method, whereas some other signs wouldn't be able to do that. Especially Gemini 1s can do that really well. But Virgo 1 can adapt as well. So they're both really well-spoken and witty. But how they're different is Dana is like an elf, right? Dana Carvey is so mischievous, even for an older man. You know, he's a senior citizen now, but he's mischievous and he's goofy, but he's silly, but he's very sharp and smart. He's such a Gemini. So you don't see that in Melissa. In Melissa, you see she's got a more earthy physical presence to her. Her approach to comedy is more organized and physical. She has more of a physical, even though she's very witty, very well spoken, and very likable, and really fun. But she has an organized and physical approach to her comedy, which she's shown in movies like Bridesmaids, and she's been in a lot of other small roles. But look up Melissa McCarthy on IMDb. She really is hilarious. She's really, really funny, and there's something very goofy and strong about her, which is also more earthy than someone like Dana, who has the Gemini, and then Dana has some water in his chart too. But I think Dana has Virgo rising, which is interesting. So there's something about major Virgo and acting, or major Virgo and comedy too. Virgo goes really, really well with comedy and acting, with that timing and the physicality. And then my last one is Jimmy Connors, born this week. So he's one of the best tennis players of all time. Jimmy Connors, along with John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg and Arthur Ashe. So Jimmy Connors was a very nervous, unstable kind of guy, and would get really mad. But it was like he was mercurial. And even though he was a early Virgo, he was shy, but then on the court, he was all business. So he would get really, really upset when things were not correct, or if a call wasn't perfect, he would get really, really upset because of the perfectionism and the correctness. So even more so than I think he was more pedantic about that, even more so than John McEnroe, who's an Aquarius Pisces. So Jimmy's Virgo, ex-Virgo tennis player. We talked about the transits. We had the new moon of Virgo. And here's another thing. So people born from September of 1975 to November of 1977, those people have Saturn in Leo. So if you know anyone born 75 to 77, now that would also go back. So you pick 30 years before that on the 5 to 6 to 7 year. So what would that be? 45, 46, and 47 as well. So those people have a natal Saturn in Leo. The reason I bring up Saturn in Leo is because this early Saturn Aries placement that we have right now, it is only 0 of Aries and it's retrograde. But as it moves forward in the next year and a half, it's going to trine all those people born in 75, 76, 77 that have the Saturn Leo placement. It will trine that Saturn in Leo, and that's a beautiful time. So those are going to be people that are turning 49, 48, 49, and 50 in the next 2 years. So 48, 49, and 50. So right around 50, most folks have Saturn in Leo. They're going to get the trine from Saturn in the next 2 years, and most likely it will give them a fiery, positive boost for their career. It's a good time for them to refine their career at more than middle age, because 50 is more than half of life. Most people don't live to 100. So, but coming up on 50, some people coming up on 50, they're getting that trine. Now, this also goes for people. This also goes for people born in 2014 and 15. So if you have a little guy or girl in your family that's turning 10 or 11, if you have a child or grandchild that's 10 or 11 in the next year, 2014, 2015, they also have Saturn. They have Saturn in Sagittarius. They're also getting the trine in the next year from Saturn in Aries. However, a 10 or 11-year-old's not working on their career yet. So how would that manifest in a 10 or 11-year-old? Well, in a 5th or 6th grader in the next year, that would mean they would have better focus or be more inspired to work harder because the fire signs are inspiration. So those 10 and 11-year-olds are going to get the Saturn in Sag will get trined by Saturn in Leo. Only a good thing. So if any student that age is struggling, it'll get easier for them in the next year. And then, of course, Saturn in Aries people, if you have Saturn in Aries, like if you're born in 68, 60, 67, I think maybe some of 66, and then going back, Saturn in Aries people, you're going to get your second Saturn return or your first one if you're coming up on turning 30 next year, or 29, you're starting it. 1995, you're 30 this year, but 96 and 97 people will be coming up on those big birthdays. And so that person is going to get the conjunction. They have a Saturn in Aries in their chart. Saturn in Aries transiting will give them the Saturn return. So that's around 60 for most people, somewhere between 58 and 61. They will get one hit and then it'll come back. And that's another opportunity for that person to completely reinvent their career or work in the last couple legs of their life as becoming an early senior citizen, and then planning on what to do as a retired senior citizen. So it's kind of interesting. But the Saturn cycles really do work. So it's, if anyone, I can do a Saturn reading for someone. I can do a Saturn return. I can do an essay or a write-up or a reading for you verbally. The Saturn placements, the Saturn transits are really powerful. You hear so many astrologers around the world talking about it, and they're focused on it for a reason, because Saturn is the lessons, tasks, but it's also positive in terms about getting fired up. So Saturn is saying, look, we got to buckle down and we got to just go. We just got to get down to business. It doesn't always have to be lofty, ambitious goals, but it's like something. Saturn's like, it's not just about fun and being silly. We have to have goals. We have to have projects. That's what Capricorn says. Capricorns are like, where's my projects? Woohoo! But that's Saturn. That's the Saturn influence in our chart. So when there's those Saturn aspects, when there's a trine, such as it will be with the fire sign Saturns, Saturn in transiting in Aries will trine those. That's a beautiful thing. And then if it's the opposition, if you happen to have Saturn in Libra, which would be the 80s, which would be like early to mid 80s people. I think 83 is late Saturn in Libra, and then I think 84 would be Saturn in Scorpio. So if that's going to take a long time. It's not going to be for really a year and a half or two. They're going to get the Saturn opposition close to their mid 40s. So if you know anybody that's 42, 41, 42, 43 right now, they're coming up on a Saturn opposition, much like a Uranus aspect as well in the early 40s that they're just completing. So there's a lot happens in from 40 to 45. There's a lot that happens, and then it all culminates at 50 with a nice trine from Saturn, which is really nice. So that should almost undoubtedly help anybody in their schooling, work, career, and just long-term goals kind of thing. All right, we lost a couple more people. We have one person left. Okay, we're getting to the end here. I appreciate my my top loyal fans hanging out with me here till the end. I know it's a long hour sometimes, but I really, really do appreciate it. And before I do my last thing, I want to say the live streams right now, I'm going to keep it for 7 p.m. here on YouTube, Astroscoop 3801, 7 p.m. Eastern time, New York time, here on YouTube. It'll be 7 or 8 p.m. for now. And look for my usually 1 to 2 videos a month. I usually do. I just did a video a couple weeks ago. You can check that out. And I'll probably have another video, not this week, but probably next week as well. So, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I really appreciate it. Okay, so to go out and end, let's look at a celebrity chart. So we're going to look at, this time we'll look at Barry Gibbs' chart from the Bee Gees. You know what's so funny about the Bee Gees? The Bee Gees, you know, the Bee Gees are all beautifully balanced, right? As men in the music, it's all beautiful, and it's very yin and soft and sensitive, but it's also yang too. I mean, it's sensual and sexy, and they have good beats, and there's strength there in their energy. So it's yin and yang together. It's not just soft. It's not just disco or fast, or just because it's all males. I really think they're one of the few groups. Earth, Wind, and Fire is another group where there's a lot of yin and yang in the group. There's a lot of loving energy, and there's a lot of yang, and a lot of positive male energy. But Bee Gees, yin and yang, very, very balanced. And some people are not willing to admit, especially men, not really willing to admit that they like the Bee Gees. But I like many of the songs, not all of them, but I do like many of the Bee Gees songs. So let's look at Barry's chart here. Barry was born on September 1st, 1946, which marks him as a Virgo 1. And I believe he's still alive. So he is just shy of 80. Imagine that. He's coming up on 79, and if he makes it, he'll be 80 next year. So here's Barry's sun at 8 degrees of Virgo. So his Virgo sun is just at the very tail end of the early Virgo 1 period. He's almost Virgo 2, but I peg him as just a double Mercury kind of guy because he was so witty, so thoughtful, and so diligent about the songs and the singing. Now that sun in Virgo ruled by Mercury in Leo. So the Mercury in Leo, not retrograde, gives him an absolute flair for expression and singing. So for a Virgo that could be shy, the Mercury in Leo, even though it's not always the best placement in astrology, it unquestionably has a strong will, it's determined, and has a flair for expression. I've known a lot of people with Mercury in Leo, and they can be very, very funny, and you can almost see it in their smile. They're funny, they're good storytellers, and there's a lot of pizzazz. Now he also has the outer planet Pluto in Leo, and Saturn, his work, also in Leo, although those are not, that is not his stellium, and those are not really conjunct. But it's a good deal of Leo energy in his chart. Then he had the Uranus conjunct the node here, Gemini, outer planet Pisces, outer asteroid in Sag, the moon in Scorpio, which gave him a lot of sex appeal and concentration and deep creativity. You know, how deep is your love, right? Well, that's one of their songs. I mean, their ballads are all in. They're 120% all in. Like, you don't listen to that music and you don't feel like any of that is halfway. The emotion's not halfway. The thoughtfulness isn't halfway. They're all the brothers. They're all in. So it's just amazing. You know, that's why they probably endured. That's why their music will live on, in a way, because they put all that dedication and that emotion into it. So for a Virgo, which is kind of unemotional, to have a moon in Scorpio, he didn't always show it, but he certainly channeled a strong emotional nature into the music, and all of that was ruled by Pluto and Leo. So very intense. Then here, this is really interesting. If this is his correct time, which I think it is, Douglas, Isle of Man, he has Libra. He has Libra rising, which is incredibly charming and personable. Only adds to the likability. And then look at this. Look at all this Libra. Neptune in the 12th, which is basically rising, gives him glamour, a sense of glamour and mystery. Mars here, basically rising. He's a very agreeable, but he's very, very ambitious. Venus in Libra, which is really well placed and charming and into beauty. Jupiter in Libra expands and helps others through being harmonious, literally through the music, literal harmony and figurative harmony. Makes you feel harmonious, and the chords are very harmonious. So I'm not sure about the other brothers, but I would imagine there's probably a lot of air signs in the charts for the likability and the ease and the skill of music and the self-expression, especially vocally. Really good for air signs. But look at all this Libra. So even though he was an earth sign and he had the moon and water, no major Pisces and no Cancer. So if you took away the moon in Scorpio, not that strongly watery, however, very strong the air sign dominance here. In fact, he's really more so of a Libra than a Virgo. If I was reading this chart, for someone and I didn't know who this was, if this was just someone off the street and said, hey, can you read my chart? And they weren't famous, I would say, you can be shy and self-effacing, but with all this Libra, you have an incredible need for admiration and to be adored. And you go to great lengths to express that and have peace with others. So very, very much more Libran. And then his Venus, the ruler, so your chart ruler is very important. It's in Libra. And it's right here. It's not somewhere else in the chart or in another sign. It's just backed up by more Libra, 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 Libra. So to say that Barry Gibb has charm, obviously, is a complete understatement. He knows how to use it, but he's obviously has it naturally as well. So, and then the moon in the second, that's very, very determined kind of thing. But there's so much more to look at here. Maybe I'll come back. I'll come back to this. Maybe I'll come back to this when we discuss Libra. I'll mention him again because he's got so much Libra, and if any Librans are watching, that might be help to them. All right. Well, thank you so much. I think this is a good time to end. Perfect hour, and I know we only had a couple people in, but thank you, my top fans. I know you don't always chat. Great analysis. Thanks. You're welcome. Thank you for being one of the top fans there. You got the badge or the crown. I love it. And I know some of the other top fans just sit on the sidelines and don't really chat, but thank you. I appreciate. I know you're coming in and out and supporting the channel. So I really, truly appreciate that. And right now my channel's growing from the United States views as opposed to some of the other foreign countries that was helping me in the fall, winter, and spring of earlier in the year. So this summer has been all United States. So thank you to the American public that's helping Astroscoop to grow. And, it's a slow process, but we're getting there. So thank you so much. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Happy new moon. Don't forget to clean things up in your life this week. Just clean. Physically clean, declutter, but clean your thoughts too. Whittle away. Don't get too nervous. Don't overthink. That's a big. I'm going to talk about more of that with next week with Virgo too. But Virgo has a tendency to overthink. So be careful of that, especially Mercury Virgo people. They have a tendency to overthink. So try not to do it. But thanks so much. I really appreciate it. This is Jeff with Astroscoop, and I'll see you next weekend. Have a good week.